Hello, people. Wouldn't be it wouldn't be a stream by me if I wasn't fucking late and somewhat unprepared. Let's get down to business. Make sure no sound's going from the screen there. Wicked. So sorry I'm late. Left everyone a bit fucking dick in hand. I had to sort a few bits and pieces out. Been a bit all over the place today. But I'm here now. This is sort of a general sort of thing that come up. I was watching this video and I was like, okay, not only is this good information regarding the eugenics against the colonized, it'd be good to just have just a bit of a ramble about, but also as a disabled individual, I can add a few bits and pieces in onto this discussion on how this intersects with the disabled struggle. And I'll also try and dive into LGBT struggle as much as I can. Though coming from it from a non-binary perspective, I'm not as experienced as, as some of the more persecuted members of the LGBTQ community. But I can still touch on a few of them issues from what I've been taught by trans comrades and homosexual comrades whom I've had the joy of engaging with and learning a lot about these struggles on. But note of caution, I am an Angloid. Oh, cutting the mic out there. I am an Angloid fucking white male, so expect incorrect things at some point, because fucking who knows when I'm gonna trip over my own fucking dick. But the general sort of quandary with just getting into the good points that Comrade Panther has been getting into in this. There's a link to the video I'm going to be covering. There's a link to his channel in the description as well. If depending on the time left, I might touch into some articles as well, but we'll see how things rock, because as much as it is a 9-minute video, I'm going to be like, oh, there's no way you could take forever with this. Don't jinx me, because I'll make you hold my beer and I'll make this a 3-hour stream. Don't fucking test me. But yeah. Sorry, I've been fairly absent recently. I've not been as frequent as I'd normally be as well. I thought I'd lay that down. But we all get to business, don't we? Alright then, let's get down to business then. Oh, I know how to use the mouse. Hello down there.
Would be worthwhile to study.
Put the volume down a bit too much.
Clinically. Yes, it would be worthwhile to study clinically, in detail, the steps taken by Hitler and Hitlerism, and to reveal to the very distinguished, very humanistic, very Christian bourgeois of the 20th century that, without his being aware of it, he has a Hitler inside him, that Hitler inhabits him, that Hitler is his demon, that if he rails against him, he is being inconsistent, and that, at bottom, what he cannot forgive Hitler for is not crime in itself, the crime against man. It is not the humiliation of man as such. It is the crime against the white man, the humiliation of the white man, and the fact that he applied to Europe colonialist procedures which until then had been reserved exclusively for the Arabs of Algeria, the coolies of India, and the blacks of Africa.
Yeah, it gets into a really major thing that goes down with the way white people deal with the World War Two. Got my mic a bit too sensitive and see it going in the red. With the way what's it with the way I can't English, with the way white people look at the Nazi genocide. Their problem isn't the fact that the Nazis were targeting oppressed groups. Their problem was that the Nazis had done to European populations what Europeans do to black people, Arab people, Asian people, and red-skinned people all around the world. So it's that complete hypocrisy in the mindset of a lot of people in the first world who are white and see the other European powers as forces of anti-fascism, when the very thing that fascism was modeling itself on was the same thing that empires of Europe have done for generations upon generations upon generations. All of a sudden now they're getting on their high horse at the end of World War II because the Nazis did to them what they typically do to anyone else whom they see as lesser. The whole Aryanism. Is it true you're a cis non-binary person? If so, you're important because there is not much representation for them. Well, yeah, what's it? I'm a non-binary and I'm bi. That's the way that I flow my boat. I don't like to talk about it much because I come from a very restrictive and a very restrictive family when it comes to these likes. So I tend to just keep these things on the down key. When you're brought up around toxic masculinity, it's very easy to commit toxic masculinity, and I have certainly not washed my sheets clean of those behaviors. I'll tell you that now. Onwards.
Amy Sejouré, Discourse on Colonialism. Euro-Americans, even so-called leftists, are united not only in their mutual enjoyment of gulping down the products of colonized people's labor, with some flagellating themselves for all the world to see, to hilarious effect, but also in their feigned shock at things that we on whose backs this country was built knew all along. The majority of Euro-Americans can be described best as gullible, naive children who, even despite their revolutionary pretensions in whether they call themselves Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyist, anarchists, or even Maoists, it simply doesn't seem to click with shit that we instinctively know. I think Fanon wrote about this somewhere. Listen, y'all, this country was built on blood, okay? You instinctively compare the horrors that you discover every day. At least you know that these are horrors. To Nazi Germany. Why? Because Nazi Germany is the epitome of evil. Why is Nazi Germany the epitome of evil? Because other Europeans suffered. They didn't invade South Africa. They invaded other European countries. France, Norway, all these places.
I mean, I'll cover on that as well. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, what about the Africa corridor and stuff like that?" It was wars with these European nations at the behest of those African people. And when people talk about those wars, they don't talk European consensus on those wars in places like Africa and Asia with the fascist powers. The problem is not set around the oppression of the colonized peoples because that would put them in a point of contention with themselves. Their problem is the insult of their empire being attacked by another European empire that's seeking to take their land, their resources, etc. It's seen as the great insult. I mean, a good thing to look into on this would be the way World War One ended. So the end of World War One, Germany was not actually the main antagonizer of World War One. They were one of them, but they were not the main antagonizer. It was actually the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And I mean the Germans and the British as well, but there was another conflict that was already brewing before the Austro-Hungarian Serbian conflict kicked off. Now you look at the end of World War One, Germany cops pretty much all the punishment. Why? Because Germany was seen as as insulting the crowns of Russia and Britain, as going against the blood of Vicky. You know, they're seen as tarnishing a brotherhood between these kingdoms, etc. Like it's you got to look at it this way: the British Empire at the late 1800s started to see itself as this big paternal empire that was the big daddy or big mommy. I don't know how you want to look at it. Of the fucking other empires. Through its monopolization on industry and trade. World War II, when that goes down and everything goes to shit, Hitler is the big fucking bad and the Nazis are the big fucking bad, not because of the actual fucking horrific things they did, but because they dared invade European nations, they dared challenge the sovereignty of the French or the British. That's the European consensus on World War II.
The quote with which I open this video is from Amy Cesare, a colleague, mentor, and friend of Franz Fanon. I highly recommend his discourse on colonialism, the text from which this excerpt came. It was recently discovered by Euro-Americans, kind of like they discovered the Americas, that non-male detainees at the fascist hellhole called Irwin County Detention Center in Georgia were being subject to hysterectomies without their informed consent. Basically, they were subjected to these sterilizing procedures against their will. This will prevent them from having children in the future. The virtue signaling left is in air quotes, is an outrage about this, making memes and threatening the usual impotent actions. Some mythical people's justice in the future is replaced by bullshit marches, letters to Congress people who don't give a rat's ass, and wordy appeals to other petty bourgeois.
Anyone can watch Fall of Eagles, should watch it. Just be warned that it makes Trotsky look like a saint and Lenin look like an opportunist. No surprise there. But still worth a watch anyway. I mean, it's as with all media, the Marxists must attain towards the most critical lenses when looking into it. This country is based on slavery and disenfranchisement of the of the indigenous. I can't read. Yeah, absolutely. The disenfranchised and the removal of indigenous people. I'd also mention on the point of forced sterilization. This is a method used by the imperialist powers throughout Europe too. I'm not so smart and savvy on the on any Eastern practices to this regard. Not saying it didn't happen. I don't know. That's what I'm saying as well. Anyone knows on what Eastern tendencies of forced sterilization? Please let me know. But I know about Britain and in the UK, if you were disabled or seen as an undesirable, so colonized and many lower class people as well, but also LGBT people, you were very possible up for forced sterilization and being put into a asylum, especially for those who suffer with disabilities. Add those. Those who suffer with disabilities. Add those who were LGBT. Big LGBT is a quick. Was a quick route to the asylum. I know the Soviet Union had some pretty horrible practices regarding sticking people with mental, psychological disabilities and people who were and people who were LGBT into asylums. So this is not a just an issue of capitalism either. This is an issue that has plagued the early socialist countries too. But this is something that has had a very predominant effect against the colonized, the disabled, and the LGBT. for eugenicists, we're like the troika of tyranny, and we're all seen as surplus population, something that is a cost to society to keep around, and therefore seen in a manner of which conglomerates towards what's it extermination. No, Comrade Panther won't be on. It's going to be a long time before Comrade Panther ever wants to engage with me because of my prior relationship with Shibby, but understandable. What's it? You make your mistakes, you gotta live them down. But hopefully, eventually, I'll be on good tidings with the Comrade. He's a very respectable comrade. So I don't see things going edgeways in the end. But I understand, given the situation that went down, why Mandem might not like me. Well, I could understand if the Mandem would hate me, but it's one of them. All I can do is both apologize, as I already have, and retribute myself in my actions, because actions speak louder than words. But anyway, onwards with the video.
Ethical people's justice in the future is replaced by bullshit marches, letters to Congress people who don't give a rat's ass, and wordy appeals to other petty bourgeois white people who give even less of a rat's ass. Now, I am no nihilist, okay? That's not me by any means. But the political grandchildren of people who sat and watched, or more often than not, happily participated, as Mary Turner, a pregnant black woman, was lynched, her child ripped from her womb and stomped to death under a settler's boot in the same state. By the way, the kid cried once. Probably don't give a damn about the plight of detainees in a concentration camp in Georgia. Since you like the Nazi comparison so much, hop in a time machine to Germany in 1941 and see how much the average German, the average so-called Aryan, gave a fuck about the plight of Jews, Roma, communists, and others in concentration camps. I hate to hurt your feelings, but out of sight, out of mind is a thing. Of course, I'm a dialectical materialist, so I know that nothing is static, but hollow moral appeals are not the way to go. This is an amoral country with amoral people.
But
this shit ain't new, okay? The Nazis in the U.S. went hand in glove, ideologically, politically, and economically. The Bush family traded heavily with I.G. Farben and other Nazi firms. Charles Lindbergh, who has a major street in my city named after him, received a medal directly from the morphine-soaked hands of Hermann Goering. Hitler recognized the U.S. as the OGs of what would be...
Also, Henry Ford massively profited off of the slave labor of the concentration camps.
...become his so-called final... Hitler recognized the U.S. as the OGs of what would become his so-called final solution. Nazi theoreticians, pseudoscientists, and other officials studied in the United States and corresponded with eugenicists in California, which was the sort of headquarters, the world headquarters of eugenics at the time. Hitler kept a photograph of Henry Ford, noted anti-Semite, on his desk. The people who claim that the U.S. in World War II were somehow anti-fascist, or who crow over World War II veterans as if they didn't come home and become cops in Birmingham, Alabama, or blow up churches full of little black kids, are purposefully deluding themselves. Where did the study of gynecology come from? J. Marion Sims carving and slicing and violating the bodies of enslaved African women. African women like Dawn Wooten, who is the heroic LPN, the nurse, the whistleblower that exposed these crimes to the world. Why was this being done? Eugenics is basically a pseudoscience which holds that the human race can be perfected by removing so-called bad traits from the gene pool. Now, in a fascist capitalist hellscape like that in which we currently live, what are bad traits? Simply being black or brown. Why do you think that they pack us off to prison, feed us trash and garbage, kill us, route toxic waste through our communities, causing birth defects and cancer, Why do they force us to go to schools that are no better than jails and where we are taught to loathe and despise ourselves? Why do they ignore the COVID pandemic? Because it mostly kills us. Because we are seen as a surplus population. Why did they wipe out several hundred indigenous tribes?
No, I mean this all conglomerates inwards as well, like inwards into the this conglomerates into the what's it crimes that were also committed against LGBT and disabled groups too. In a fascist state where it sees bad traits as a negative thing, being black is one that's assigned in these fascist white supremacist states, and anyone else who's of other colonized groups that aren't the de facto white group. I mean, in Britain, for example, the plight of Irish people as well comes into this too, as well as the other Celtic peoples, the Brittonic and the Gaelic Celts. The what's it? This the what's it? The mannerism of the whole system is to eliminate those of which whom sorry, I can't English very well, I'm having a problem. The what's it? The system of fascism is centered around the ideas. Blackness is proletarian culture within the first world. No, yeah, absolutely, but it's it's a big center of proletarian struggle. But what I'm getting at is that the targeting of black people for extermination and other colonized groups also seeps into the targeting of LGBT and disabled groups for extermination as well. I look to the UK again as well. So during World War One, all the way up until the 60s, and you know this happened in the late 1800s as well, but there's a lot of recorded history of it from the 1910s onwards, where they would go on mass sterilization programs of disabled people and homosexual people. They also targeted colonized groups with these sterilization programs. These programs were centered around disseminating a population that is seen as Black Red Guard, Comrade Panther rightly said, the surplus population. I know how to English. The we're seen as surplus population, and so our existence is seen as an excess to society, something that is a cost. And through eugenics, that cost is seen as a cost not just on economics, but also on genetics. And so in the process of the way these eugenic fascist states operate, is they target the disabled, the colonized, and the LGBT population, and damn you be all three. It's I mean, it's so easy to point it out with a very outspoken fascist state. It's very easy to look and go, well, that state is a fascist state that pervades a eugenic system that's doing, you know, the more like violent ragging people out of their homes, Nazi style shit. But in our supposedly liberal democracies, where fascism has made a return in a very different manner, we've got this third way bullshit that's fucking going around like a big stinky stack of shit that seems to constantly catch a neoliberal cold every now and then when it gets the chance to fucking absolutely clot the economy into shit. They're not very good at doing the fascism, but they are fascist nonetheless. That state apparatus, throughout its entire period of time of a liberal or social democrat, whether fucking, you know, soft wing fascist or fucking outright fascist, has purveyed a system of eugenics that has targeted the colonized, the disabled, and the LGBT and the communities, and those who suffer with mental and mental illnesses and psychological illnesses as well, because they constantly get excluded from the disability struggle when they're going through disabilities themselves, especially with the way society treats us. Like, what's it? I find someone who has other find someone in any of these groups who are in the lower class. Most of us are suffering with some form of, depression in a chronic state and a chronic anxiety, PTSD, because of all the trauma that people have to go through. And that, like, the ignorance around these issues becomes a grand problem. But what's it? The uh the medical system is one of the most common institutions, as well as the education system, that are utilized to purvey this eugenic, not just ideology but the functionality of it. Education purveys the ideology, the medical system purveys the functionality. Anyone who's had to deal with ER or A&E services, whether it is the insurance-based America or it's fucking social healthcare, you'll find that if you are in the lumpen proletariat, and you're of any of these minority groups as well, especially colonized, disabled, LGBT, or you're one of those groups and you're even in the proletariat and even to many degrees the middle class, especially in America, middle class colonized groups are constantly targeted by white supremacists. You're not likely going to get the same kind of respectability and decent healthcare that you would otherwise get if you were a white upper worker, middle class, male. And that's a very soft form of eugenic treatment that occurs. And then there's mistreatment that occurs if you do get treatment, that is very common. And there's also all the experimental shit that's been done on us. You've got a good example of someone who's autistic would be the use of hallucinogenics on autistic people in the 70s for experimentation. What's it? You also have the factor of forced sterilization throughout history. So there's I'm sorry I'm stumbling on my words a bit. Fucking brain is out my ass most of the time. But that's brain fog for you. But this is a big reason why people of all three of those groups are very, very anxious and untrusting of the healthcare services of their respected area and country, because of the historical mistreatment and also of anecdotal personal mistreatment that goes down, and the common experience of people in the now within these groups and the intersectional relationship these groups have. Brings to the consciousness of the people of this struggle, because consciousness is a conglomerative thing. It is not an individual thing. Consciousness is what exists and how it invades a certain manner of mindset and perspective and philosophy on the world. That is why the proletarian experience develops the class consciousness necessary for socialist revolution. This is a very core part of Marxian philosophy. But the consciousness that envelops within those intersectional struggles creates a veil of distrust with these institutions because of that history, that common consensus, that also factor of just your own experiences going through life and how they teach you. So it's a really important factor people need to keep in mind. Whiteness is Americanism is both genocide and cultural genocide. the American uh, colonial state presides, its existence presides on genocide. It must. It, it persists on genocide. Sorry, I know how to English. That's the only way it can exist. It must it must cement itself over the natives and new Africans, of which it removed the populations of within the respective concepts of both, because that, depending on how you contextualize that, applies to both peoples in that regard. But systematic genocide of Native American tribes, and the systematic genocide of African peoples by dragging them over the Atlantic to work as slaves and trying to wipe out as much of their culture that they could as possible in the process. Whiteness is based in the Inquisition. It gets its name from the British. It is a colonial nepotism originally for Western Christians. It was a way of turning the house slave into the indentured servant, so that they could create a form of aristocracy between the slaves, so that there would be conflict and struggle, and there would be a tendency of the house slave to side with the master over the chattel slave brothers and sisters.
Because they were seen as we are seen as a surplus population. Why did they wipe out several hundred indigenous tribes? Because they were seen as a surplus population and they needed their land. The white man wanted his Lebensraum, and he got it through the ultimate and final manifestation of eugenics, genocide. Look at our Puerto Rican comrades. Up until the beginning of this century, when it was overtaken by India, our brothers and sisters on that island had the highest rate of forced sterilizations in the world. Check out Nelson Dennis's book, War Against All Puerto Ricans. It will piss you off. It certainly did me, and it takes a lot to piss me off. Puerto Rican mothers will leave the hospital with their child and their fallopian tubes tied. There was a cracker doctor who wound up on the cover of Time magazine who bragged about his ability to give Boricua people cancer. He was literally going down there with radiation machines giving these people cancer. The tribune of the Boricua people, the founder of the Nationalist Party, Afro-Puerto Rican Don Pedro Albizu Campos, was tortured to death by radiation in prison because his party dared to rebel in 1950 to get the United States off their land. Let's go to the South. Hysterectomies were so commonplace when black women went to the doctor that they were called Mississippi appendectomies. Fannie Lou Hamer received one, against her will. My grandmother, who was born and raised in Mississippi, still fears and despises doctors to this day. Let's be real, y'all. Truth time, no more bullshit. Contradictions are sharpening. The forces of genocide are sharpening their knives and preparing for what they think is a final showdown. They are already showing y'all what they intend to do. We are facing people who have no qualms about massacring entire nations and ethnicities of people. They literally want to condemn us to the tomb in a million different ways. Dare you defy them? Why do you keep making yourself a target? Why do you keep doing all these non-violent, peaceful marches? I saw a news article the other day. 95% of Black Lives Matter marches are peaceful and violent. My friend, they are killing us. That is not a good thing. Okay? That is not a good thing, to be peaceful in the face of a violent enemy that wants to wipe you off.
Yeah, that's a method for destruction. You're gonna get yourself destroyed if you're to just, come at it in a complete motion of puritanical peace. As Kwame Ture rightly said, peace as a principle is pacifism. Non-violence as a principle is moronic, because if your enemy is willing to kill you no matter what, you got to be ready to defend yourself, otherwise you will die. They're not going to just turn around and go, oh, well, you were peaceful enough, so we don't want to kill you anymore. If that was the case, I can name so many points in history where genocide, massacre, war should never have happened because of that kind of notion, because of that kind of pathetic notion. So no, Comrade Panther is absolutely spot on. They're killing our black brothers and sisters out there with the police force. They're killing our black brothers and sisters out there in America. And with the coronavirus, that was used as a tool against colonized, disabled, elderly, and LGBT populations, especially in America. But in the UK, we had that problem as well, especially against the elderly and the disabled. And it just it goes unconcerned about. I mean, people aren't even that concerned about the coronavirus itself anymore, and it's still going about. And that's because the people whom it gets pushed onto and affects the most are seen as deplorables, are seen as surplus peoples, are seen as people. We're not cared about by the system. They want us gone. That goes into the disabled, that goes into the colonized, that goes into the LGBT. They do it with the elderly as well. They see anyone whom is unable to create a profit for society or are not perceived as pure enough for their gene pool. So you have to be white and not disabled and straight and really, it's cornered, and sometimes it's not even straight. I mean, there are homosexual fascists out there. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I mean, as Black Red God has pointed out himself, Comrade Panther, there were fucking. There've been plenty of black fascists. There've been plenty of. I mean, we got Asian fascism going off on like a wild streak. There is Japan. Like a lot of people get caught up on just centering fascism around white supremacy when it's more so that white supremacy is a form of fascism, Nazism. But that Nazism is just the final conclusion on white supremacy. It is not the be all end all of it. There is a persistent history of white supremacy that created Nazism that comes from British, French, Spanish, Dutch, Belgium, which is a British satellite state, Portuguese, and did I say Spain? Spanish colonialism. I don't think I said Spain, and Italy to a lesser degree. But what's it? Did I mention the Germans too? The Germans. I don't think I did. But white supremacy and the mannerism with which how this unfolds is very heavily centered on this genetic purity eugenics, which was late 1800s science, pseudoscience, crafted up by the cousin of Darwin. I think he was in America at the time, but I might be wrong. But it's based off of phrenology and Malthusianism, which comes to craft the eugenic idea, or what it's also been known as throughout history, and they are the same thing. They're not different. They are the same thing. Social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is another word for eugenics, but either one is perfectly applicable. They are both the same thing. It takes the theory of evolution to the fascist extent that it can be taken to by those whom get from those whom take important scientific discoveries and twist them on their head and pull them inside out. Fascism applies a very Hegelian lens to how in which it looks at humanity, and centers itself on looking at things between the two pointiations that it wants to look at, and that's being pure and impure and the contradiction between those two. That's their mindset. So they center themselves on desired traits that suit the system at B in which they want to purvey, which will attack those of which who aren't white, those of which who are disabled, those of which whom are LGBT. It's social Darwinism has nothing to do with the real Darwinian sciences. Yeah, absolutely. As Maoist third worldist movement said, social Darwinism has absolutely nothing to do with real Darwinian sciences. And heck, Darwinian said a lot of stupid shit. He ain't the be-all end-all of evolution. He found something good, and it goes on. It's the same with Marx. Marx said some stupid shit, man. Like, guy was a petty bourgeois poet. Of course he's gonna get some fucking things wrong. The guy's not proletarian. He hasn't got the full range of experience to know it all and be it all. And heck, even some of the great theorists that were also not proletarian, Lenin, for example, Lenin actually did go into proletarian life for short bits. And as what Stalin rightly says, that wouldn't give yourself a proletarian consciousness. Lenin at least put himself in the shoes of the people he wanted to help, especially when he was on the run. Um, I think in Germany he was a worker at one point. It was one of his aliases. But uh, oh, that you have to put it onto live chat. It's on top chat. It won't show everyone. But what's it? The the reason why mass line is important is that the party is not always conglomerated of the proletarian intellectual. Now, the aim of the party, as Lenin rightly says, is to shift out petty bourgeois intellectuals and replace them with proletarian intellectuals. And what's it? The organic intellectual, as Gramsci points out, which comes from the proletariat, is the new intellectual that when they're able to actuate their own formalization of education and academic accessibility, they would fold over into the new. They would become the new. I don't know how to word it. Probably getting a bit detracted getting into this, but I will be doing a stream on intellectuals at some point because it's a really important pointation in how this is going down. So at the moment, like, the organic intellectual is not cemented into the next. So when you know how a dialectic, you got the conglomeration of contradictions, and then you have the quantitative leap forward. So the conditions of capitalism and the rise of the proletarian intellectual, the organic intellectual, it comes from the urban scholars, as Nat says, it comes from experience. Experience-based learning is the best way to learn, and all forms of learning do conglomerate from experience. But I mean direct experience. I'm getting a bit waffly, but the pointation is that at the point the new intellectual is not fully cemented itself, because when they cement the socialist system and are able to actuate the new academia, this conglomerates a new form of education and study of the world that is centered around the methodology, philosophy, and ethics of the proletarian intellectual. Sorry, I fucking waffled that out a bit and made it a bit hard to follow, but basically, while capitalism exists and while the proletarian state does not, the organic intellectual, the proletarian intellectual, is not at its what would be the word? We're in a disadvantaged state and not fully cemented in what we are to be, what we will become. It's something that is not yet. It's not yet something that's part of the historical experience of our class within these countries where we have not had socialism and not had that proletarian state. So it is something to become in the full process. But our experiences and our drive through life and that historical ramification to come through many of us who have generations of family and have been in the lower class. That experience-based learning through life means that when the proletarian intellectual gets access to Marxist literature and learns Marxian theory, they can understand and command that theory better than if a petty bourgeois person with the same knowledge of Marxism then read that same Marxist theory, because their experience will drive a greater understanding of the words that's written on the pages. It's about the proletariat. If it's about the proletariat are going to understand it greatly well. That's interesting, Pinks. I would say that the way the Marxists see it is anarchy doesn't come until high stage communism when state doesn't exist anymore. That's the Marxist position on anarchy. Because Marxists are not anti-anarchy. We just think it takes a while to get there. That's really the pointiation of difference. Just for a lot of Marxists who don't get it, because it seems to be Marxists a lot of the time. You have to explain that anarchists are not communist. It's like anarchists are communists. Like a lot of people say communists and anarchists. It's like, well, don't you mean Marxists and anarchists? They're both communists. It's just anarchism was a split in the communist, and technically it persists before in other proto-anarchist movements that existed throughout the 17th and 18th century. Radical liberalism needs to finally be identified as fascist. I agree. I will be your co-host. I have declared it so. What's it? No stress. Sounds like a grand plan. We can cause a lot of havoc together.
Off the face of the fucking earth, I'm sorry. It's killing us. That is not a good thing. Okay? That is not a good thing to be peaceful in the face of a violent enemy that wants to wipe you off the face of the fucking earth. I'm sorry. Why keep appealing to the conscience of people who have already expressed their intention to eradicate you, your family, and everybody else who thinks, looks, or acts like you from the face of the earth? The political question is simple. Do you?
Oh yeah, what's it? I have to see when you're next free and able to get on and do something, get a discussion going on. I mean, an important discussion to get to right now would be the rising anti-trans, the rising anti-trans, protesting and discrimination, that's going on in America, the UK, Canada, and other European countries at the moment. Because in the last 3 years, transphobia has risen massively. And Lumpen power.
Earth, I'm sorry. Why keep appealing to the conscience of people who have already expressed their intention to eradicate you, your family, and everybody else who thinks, looks, or acts like you from the face of the earth? The political question is simple. Do you have the right to exist or not? Do you have the right to education, a house, employment that makes you proud, medical treatment that doesn't fucking sterilize you, and a long, happy, healthy life free of debt and worry? If you believe so, congratulations, and welcome to the revolution. Hope you're ready to back up your belief with more than memes and words, because shit is getting real out here. I'm Black Redguard.
He's right, UK recently, was it 4, 5? I think it's 5 years ago, put through a bill to crack down on left-wing groups. And they've tried to, I don't know if it succeeded or not, but they've gone about trying to make it illegal to even teach people about socialism, even in the education centers, for organizations. What's it? Sorry, fucking been attacked by the sandflies. What's it? Now the video's over, I'll return to site. what's it? Things are getting really heated up, especially in America, but all over the place. Not just in the sense of persecution as well. I mean, like a lot of strikes have been going on, and a lot of these communist organizations, they're not doing anything to organize these strikes. They've got organizational power, even monetary power. They're not doing anything to organize these strikes. They don't try to help organize unions. They're too busy squabbling over fucking bullshit that happened fucking 90 years ago that no one gives a fuck about. People on the internet, they're also squabbling about that. They're going around trying to be agitative, annoying little shits, thinking that like it's gonna attract people and make people think you're lovely and respectable, comrades of the working class by walking around with. As much as I love Comrade Stalin, a Buster Stalin, and just bowling in the streets, for the CPG BML dickheads out there. It's where's the actuation, even around the proletariat? Like, anyone who knows me enough or has seen my content enough knows I already have a problem enough with the first world parties and their complete, in a lot of cases, ignorances, and in some cases, it's CPG BML, acknowledgement of the revolutionary content of the Lumpen proletariat, and then admission that they want nothing to do with us. That we're rowdy and unorganizable. But, everyone knows I have my problem with the exclusion of the Lumpen proletariat already, but they don't even want to actuate around the very slim proletariat we still have in the first world. It's one thing to just already exclude us, but the actual political power that a communist movement has in the traditional sense, because they constantly do this traditionalism to do class reductionism. Even its traditional power basis of organizing unions and strike power so that the proletariat are actuating their political power against the system, they're not even doing that. So we're in a complete sense of disarray in regards to struggle. And a lack of organization around this struggle constantly affects lower class groups, colonized groups, disabled groups, and LGBT groups. And we're seeing a surplus undesirable populations. So these people don't actually run that struggle. I mean, in the UK, a lot of the workforce in the lower class consists of immigrants from the British Commonwealth or from the Europe, from poor countries in Europe. So a lot of these very white Anglo-Saxon communist dogs who think Great Britain is a title that they should be putting on their fucking thing, or the UK, when they're supposed to be anti-colonialists and communists. They don't want to fucking do anything for them. And then in America, you got these very white middle class settler communist parties, and they don't want to do anything for them. Mostly black, Chicano, Taino, Navajo, fucking Hopi, see, I had the name then. The ones from the fucking northeast. I don't know why I'm trying to name as many as I can. That always makes you look like a dickhead. I should just say native peoples, rather than making myself look like a dickhead. The native peoples, the black peoples, and other lower class immigrants like Japanese people, and we're in the working class. These white fucking middle class settler communist parties don't give a dinkleberry shit about those peoples, and would rather do everything they can to not get anywhere near them. The disenfranchisement of these colonized proletarian groups is very apparent. But even in America, a lot of these white communist parties can't even be asked to organize around their white working class fucking strikes and union organizing either. That much of a bunch of fucking sackheads. Bunch of bellends. Zero, yeah. Comrade number 3 says hi, both you and Falcon. Oh, respect, brother. All love and respect, Comrade number 3. He's very busy, but he has not forgotten anyone. No, no stress. I understand. I recently watched a documentary about Indians who tricked into coming to Canada to attend second-rate colleges that no Canadian citizen would ever go near. Exactly. We treat colonized peoples like a dick cloth. I mean, with the vaccine rollout, we not only charged the third world, even people in the third world we experimented on, like black South Africans, and we then not only charged them for vaccine, but we sold them faulty vaccines, dodgy vaccines, shit that would kill you even if it was injected properly. And in the first world, there were improper injections of a vaccine. Now, if I know about perforation, so does a doctor. We've been talking this video, we've gone through medical malfeasance and how that's used to attack colonized populations. Now, if you inject the coronavirus vaccine into your bloodstream, it will cause your heart to fucking stop from fucking inflammation and cause a heart attack. That's what it can do to you. If so, it and they know about perforation. They're wrongly injecting it. I doubt on most occasions it's because of an accident. I find it's more so likely that undesirable people, which a middle class medical worker, has more than the consciousness to apply to that fascism, that fascist consciousness themselves on an intellectual basis, no more than them being an actuative hand of a state that already applies towards a eugenic mannerism towards the disabled, the colonized, the LGBT, and the elderly. If you know, all it takes is a wrong injection and you fucked up their life more than it already is. If they've got severe conditions like autoimmune problems like I have, that shit can fuck you over. The poor injections was the thing that made me stay away from getting vaccinated. As soon as I heard about this fucking shit with the myocarditis, and I learned about the UK and the US leading in cases of improper injection of vaccination, um, and given the strong eugenic culture of both of these countries, it made a switch in my brain click, and I knew I didn't want to go anywhere near anyone given this vaccine. I'd rather stay away from having any other problems on my heart than I already have. Um, I don't know why the fuck. Does anyone want to get some fucking what's it? There you go. I've seen so many YouTube channels get attacked with all these fucking weird pop-up things. Fucking YouTube running out of money or something. But what's it? We can prove that radical liberalism is fascist by proving that FDR was such. FDR was not even social democratic. He was radical. He wasn't even radical. He was straight up fascist. Like the guy praised Mussolini in 1923 as having the ideal economic economic and political policy, and saw the idea of being a dictator as a good idea for America, and thought that it would better suit the American system. So what's it? YouTube is now money tube. Well, red libs are fascists, but like, what's it? Fucking radical liberalism is a weird thing that seems to have come out of the failure of neoliberalism. Like, Neoliberalism emerged from ordoliberalism, which started off in Germany in the late 1920s. The ordoliberals were what came in after the Social Democrats. They came in after the Social Democrats. The SDP lost control over the lost power. Sorry, I can't English. When Hindenburg was the prime minister or chancellor or whatever, president of Germany, I think was the title at that point in time. He made Hitler Reichs chancellor. I used to call them social fascists, but as I wrote more about it, they are clearly just another version of fascist. Oh, of course. I mean, the third way, which is the main philosophy of, rad libs like Tony Blair, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Keir Starmer, Hillary Clinton, all these dickheads. They follow this thing called the third way, which is an idea crafted by Anthony Giddens, a Labour lord from the UK in the mid to late 80s. And it basically, the idea was to combine the experiments with corporatism from Britain during the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, and the and European social democracy from the Cold War, and basically find a middle ground between those two, and that was the idea of the third way and how to subvert both neoliberalism and social democracy. Tony Blair, Anthony Giddens said Tony Blair got too involved with neoliberalism rather than actually committing to the third way. It was an interesting comment on Tony Blair's failed implementation of fascism in the late 90s and early 2000s. But the Conservatives have their own split on the issue. They've got a neoliberal faction and a third positionist faction that have been squabbling over the last 30 years. And so, what's it? If someone is talking about neither socialism nor capitalism or neither left nor right, they are fascist. Yeah, that's where that third way idea comes from. Neither left nor right, neither socialist nor capitalist, neither communist nor capitalist, neither, and it's oh god, what's coming out of this? Oh no. And that was their thing. Neither social democracy nor neoliberalism is their thing. And while some third way lot will say they're anti-corporatist, they base so much of their shit on corporatism. I can't see why they would be opposed to it. I know that Blairism and the Clintonite line, they both committed a bit too much to corporatocracy over corporatism. Corporatism seeks to make a form of guild between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie to craft class collaboration, so that there's some form. Even Mussolini couldn't fully implement that because the bourgeoisie lost their shit, so he had to make a dual syndical system that worked with how in which they interacted, so the bourgeoisie had their own somewhat separate syndicate. But that's sort of that mentality around those things. But corporatocracy doesn't operate like that. Corporatocracy is that the bourgeoisie instigate the corporations, the big capitalists, the big bourgeois, they instigate a union of how in which they organize things together, basically that, squaring down a lot of the competition between them, other than the artificial competition that exists to give this persistent capitalist realism in the way in which the economics work, but basically to try and create this unity amongst the corporations that then rule the democratic systems through lobbying and other means of capital and capital control of politics. I can English. Corporatocracy is not very effective for implementing fascism because it creates conflict between the bourgeoisie and the middle class. And that's what we've seen over the last 30 years. We've seen the middle class get more and more riled up with them paying their way and the bourgeoisie not, because in a corporatocracy, the capitalists can just skive tax. They don't fucking need to give a shit. That's their mentality. It pervades this pseudo-liberalism to allow laissez-faire to exist within the same system as within the same systematic operations as fascist economics. So they will apply very tight restrictions on the lower and middle classes through austerity, while they themselves will act within their own economic world as if the economy wasn't even falling apart and they needed to pay more of the way in the first place, and apply laissez-faire principles to how in which they operate along the aristocrats cannot be trusted, and they vacillate. The petty bourgeois classes vacillate between the proletariat movement and the bourgeois movement, and we got to try and convince as many of them onto our side, and utilize the support when in which we can. But the what's it the what's it they have their own class interests, the petty bourgeois, that are contradictive towards the proletarian interests. And there's what's it a great quote. Let me pull up a quote that I was sent by a Lumpen comrade, Lumpen Celt, blessed comrade. That's really fucking right on for this. Well, it's a quote that he sent me from Black Red Guard. Interestingly enough, where is it? Where is it? Fuck. Oh, it's a really good quote as well. Where is it? Quote, all the quote-unquote left grifters and social climbers end up becoming fascists once they realize the communists don't have any money. That's why they are communists, end quote. What's it? So that's what's to be expected of the fellow travelers of the proletariat. It's a term that was used by the communists for the petty bourgeois, vacillate to proletarian interests, but quickly bend away from their struggle. What's it? Comrade sent the specific quote the other day, so I'm just gonna find it and read it out completely. 'Cause it's a good quote. Um, where is it? One second. Okay, I got it. Quote, let the petty bourgeois, quote unquote, fellow travelers of the proletariat slavishly following the liberals hold forth contemptuously against, quote unquote, the underground, against, quote, advertising the illegal press, end quote. Let them cherish illusions about the June 3rd, quote unquote, legality. We know the fragile nature of that quote unquote legality. We shall not forget the historical lessons of the importance of an illegal press, end quote, Lenin on our tasks. Very, very important quote to lay down on the petty bourgeois, the middle class, and their interactions with things. And you gotta remember as well, these petty bourgeois people in these white supremacist countries, they have had quite the history of selling out the movement for things they're supposedly against, like fascist eugenics states. When they turn against the struggle, as Black Red Guard Price said, they go fascist. Yeah, I know exactly what you're implying, Pinks. I know it's an ace choice of name. Um, but the what's it? The petty bourgeois fellow travelers of the proletariat, as Lenin's pointing out, they are very likely going to turn on the struggle at any moment as they tail liberalism into the decadency of fascism. It's as Black Red Guard rightly points out, the left grifters, the people whom are only somewhat interested in the struggle or are uninvested but support the elements of struggle. Those people are the first people to stab it in the back. And the opportunists that are in it for their own get, when they realize we ain't got no pennies to give them, and that we're looking to make for a struggle where people don't have to be forking out pennies for shit, they stab it in the back and they turn fascist. They're in it for themselves. And people who are in it for themselves are gonna fucking get you at some point. They're gonna fuck you over at some point. The communist struggle is not for handouts to fucking individuals to want to get what they want. The communist struggle is for organizing and building a dual power structure to rise up and fight for the needs of the proletariat, to conglomerate towards an actuation of people's war, applying towards the international the material conditions of revolutionary struggle on an international basis, to understand where in which one must apply towards revolutionary defeatism or revolutionary activism. And I don't mean like activism is not to be done. I mean like specifically revolutionary activism. I mean actual revolutionary, fucking struggle, warfare, guerrilla fucking fighting, the seizure of power, proper activism. Otherwise is different. It's a different kettle of fish. That's not the revolutionary activism of actually, taking the whole power. But revolutionary defeatism has its own activism that is necessary for the actuation of its revolutionary needs, and that is applying towards the conditions. Applying to constructing dual power around the conditions of which already around the conditions that already persist in the first world that create lower that create the sorry, I can't English. Organizing around those who are already struggling in poverty and building up a dual power system. Organizing education, squatter housing, soup kitchens, uh, uh, you know, uh, 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 healthcare support for people and shit like that. Like creating the processes that a state body would that invites people into a movement of struggle that is not just applying to the needs of these people and doing the soup kitchen, the housing program, the et cetera, et cetera, not just doing those, but actuating those as a part of a dual power structure for the needs of revolutionary struggle. Obviously, within the first world confines, the needs and actuation of that revolutionary struggle was conglomerate around revolutionary defeatism because of our position in the first world. But that means actuating the lumpen proletariat and the proletariat around and the labor aristocrats and the petty bourgeois people that are willing to join us around anti-war struggle, around trying to organize strikes that can at least stop some of the wheels of capitalism in the first world and trip it over its own dick. So it has to apply a lot of focus to the first world and off the third world, allowing their revolutionary struggles to actuate. I mean, we're not going to be the be-all end-all that allows it to go on, but you know what I mean. Trying to loosen the grip of imperialism where we can. Trying to make sure that no smoke is being blown up our own arse. Revolutionary defeatism is about understanding that we're not where it's going to happen yet, but we got to not only build struggle in the first world to support where it will be happening as a part of our international proletarian unity with our brothers and sisters around the world, but we also have to be organizing ourselves ready for when it does occur here. You know, we're dialectical materialists. Nothing is static. Things will always be changing, and while revolution is at a defeative point in the first world, it will not always be that case. I gave Rizka TV more than a fair play to explain himself. He just said it. He's just a larp. Corporal Cap's correct. He invited Comrade Net over for his own hype. I mean, the guy might just be fucking fed, to be fair, with his family connections, but I'm a third worldist, you'd make a great anarchist. That's a compliment. Bless it. What's it? Anarchists and Maoists have always gotten along quite well. Wow. Mostly have gotten along quite well. But we wouldn't be Marxists if we didn't start a few squabbles of anarchists. That's a part of the job. Comes with the fucking papers. Lumpen proletarians of the world unite. Absolutely. A revolutionary suicide is an important actuation of struggle. It's known that struggle is bigger than any individual that actuates it. That a brother is going to inspire more people carrying the flag to his death than he is going to avoiding death as much as he can and becoming a prized paupering Kaiserist of the movement. It's best to be one with all the brothers that are fucking struggling than it is to rise up as this famed individual like a lot of people try to do through the communist movement, which actually ends up choke holding it. You'll end up turning into people like that fucking kook Bobavakian. Bobavakian is not hiding in France from the FBI. The FBI is hiding in America from Bobavakian. Same with the CIA. But we got to understand that the colonialism of Europe is very intrinsic to the history of eugenics. Uh, it pervades from a long history of racism, genocide, and what's it? And colonial conquest. It is not something new. The processes of eugenic extermination existed before what's it the long the functions and behaviors of eugenics existed long before the pseudoscience of eugenics itself was created. Methods of these went down. Yeah, it's a bit fucking nutcasey with all this shit that comes through. Um, what's it? Fucking YouTube's having a moment. I need to check my thing because what's it? I have it so it's supposed to fucking auto delete anything that's dodgy, bots and stuff. But fucking what's it? These fucking creep channels always end up fucking appearing on people's fucking streams, and I don't get why. I remember watching it was a live like breakdown of some fucking video game, and it was getting all spammed up with these things. Well, what's it? I hope the 5 new customers they may have appealed to us help them out. Fucking dickheads. Fucking internet is a fiend for money. It's a fucking rinse pot. All communist actuations of struggle would do better off without the internet existing in many ways. I mean, it's a massive benefit to us in loads of ways, but the cyberspace has become not only just a surveillance space, but a cancerous space of money laundering and wealth extraction. Before I get into a circular ramble on this somewhat short stream for me, maybe I am getting more streamlined, who knows. I will conclude that the eugenics is not a past problem alone. It as much as it is a problem of our history, it's a history that has not ended. It has not come to pass. It is still ongoing, has continued to be ongoing, and has only found new ways to keep itself out of sight, out of mind of those purveying within the veil of capitalist realism. Exactly as Comrade saying, eugenics is still here. Like Pink said, MoneyTube has replaced YouTube. Absolutely right. But what's it? It's something that has not come to pass. I had a really cool one-liner come to mind, and I've lost it now. Just thinking of going out with a really, really good statement on the issue, and I can't remember what it was. Yeah, it's an issue that has not come to pass. It is still here. It's been around with us for a very, very long time, and it's something that we have to oppose with great strength. Out of sight, out of mind. What was it? I don't know what I had to say. Yeah, so what's it? The people in capitalist realism, eugenic oppression of peoples is out of sight, out of mind for them. They live in the world bubble that the middle class, especially for the white middle class, that is allowed for them by the blood money of empire that allows them to sit in a massively wealthy position compared to the majority of the world and the mass of people in their own country. It's about time those of which in that class whom persist in capitalist realism, whom claim they are communists, claim they're left, claim they're MLs, anarchists, Maoists, etc., to step the fuck out of capitalist realism and come step into the capitalist reality, us in the lower class, us whom are disabled, us whom are colonized, us whom are LGBT, are experiencing. Because they'll find that capitalist reality is a lot less functional than capitalist realism likes to purvey it, and much more horrific. People need to really get their shit together in the communist movement, myself included, all around the first world, and start getting organized, because it is revolution or genocide of the entire human population if we don't get our shit together. So we need to get it together, get organized, actuate towards the most disenfranchised groups of people, and that doesn't just mean go to the lumpen proletariat poor. It means also looking at the other separate groups of people that intersect with those poor groups, because a lot of the colonized groups, a lot of the LGBT groups, end up lumpen proletarians because of their disenfranchisement. So you got to look outwards of just the class of proletarian and look into the class character of racism, sexism, and homophobia, transphobia. You will be amazed, if you haven't already looked into it, at the very much class character of these problems. And that's why we cannot be class reductionists within the proletarian issue, because there is a wider issue of these intersectional and struggles that are relics of history in many cases that have not passed. Like I'm talking about eugenics, have not passed. Sexism and the mistreatment of women comes from really, really old class conditions that have not passed. Racism as well comes from very old class conditions that have not passed. It's that both of these things have evolved into even more vulgar characterizations of themselves, regardless of how in which the people of these struggles have garnered greater benefits in certain areas. Otherwise, I mean, no one's turning around and saying that being in chattel would be better than not, but it doesn't change the fact that white supremacy has worsened over time. It has not, it's not gotten better. It doesn't matter that things have cleaned up. The problem is still just as fucking horrific, and just as on that and on the same mass scale, on the same systematic platform. It's just changed. It's evolved in its character, but it's not changed in its philosophy. So this way, you've got to look at things through the intersectional lens of there's class, race, gender, and all these other societal structures that affect the way in which our struggles must actuate. So step the fuck out of capitalist realism. Come step into capitalist reality and intersect yourselves into our struggles. Learn from the people. Apply last mass line through these organizations that need to be built. They have to be built. No good going on about, oh, there ain't no good ones. We got to go about building it. As soon as I fucking manage to get the operation I need from the NHS and I move, I'm going to be starting my own shit up and trying to get comrades organized. That's the way we got to go about things. If it doesn't exist, it's big, it's scary, but we have to start it. Everything starts small. Eventually it's going to kick off. Things will organize, you know. What's more feeble than the strength of one? But in unity, we are strong. So fucking organize. And with these organizations, apply to mass line, actuate towards struggle, show people. Don't tell people alone. You've got to show and tell, because if you show what if you walk your talk, people will be intrigued. And if you walk your walk in a way where you show people that they can be involved, that they can do this, that they can help out, that coming together is going to build a stronger power basis for this actuation of struggle, people were more likely to conglomerate towards it. The Panthers call it observation and engagement. a very important principle for an applying organization and how much to actuate forward. But we have to get organized. We have to find a basis of struggle around the disenfranchised groups within the first world and organize around not just dual power alone, which is very important, but organizing dual power for the purpose of struggle to aid international revolutionary struggle and apply principally to our role in the role of revolutionary defeatism when it comes to the actuation of the revolutionary movement on an international basis. The proletariat is an international class, and we must actuate that brotherhood along the international basis, which also exists for the lumpen proletariat. We should not be excluded from that. So the this is the pointiation of being. So that's it. Like the world. I mean, some people don't even think there's more than 2 years left with the way things are going. And some people don't think there's more than 10 years left with the way things are going. And it then I'm not surprised. Things are horrific right now. Everything is falling apart, and the capitalist system is just chugging along, burning life away, destroying resources to overproduce itself into a grave. Well, everyone is pointing out to them, and a lot of them are even understanding it and knowing that the world is being destroyed, and then just profits are more important to them than the fact the world's going to blow up. So the people who are petty bourgeois, labor aristocrats, and fuck me if there's even some people who are bourgeois calling themselves Marxists, communists, socialists, anarchists. Step the fuck out of capitalist realism and apply yourself to capitalist reality and actually gain some experience from it. Fuck me, I've always said this to a lot of people I know, comrades in the middle class. Try and live out in the wilderness every now and then at least. Or even fucking better. Go every now and then and experience homelessness. Don't encroach on anyone's business. Don't fucking strain on the people who are already struggling in the streets. If anything, offer them help while you're down there. But go and actually experience what it's like to not have a home for fucking every now and then. Keep your mind fresh of what it's like to fucking be struggling with nothing but the clothes on your back and going through fucking hell. Or even just at least living off bare minimum essentials in the fucking woods for a week every now and then. Just keeping yourself in outside of that fucking that comfort world every now and then to just get yourself some freshness. It's not going to give you no proletarian consciousness. Don't blow smoke up your own ass, but it at least gives you a break from that comfort world of fucking of the middle class and a break out of that reality, and just to experience a little bit of fucking cold on your shoulder. Even still, your class position gives you a greater element of protection when you're in that position anyway. So you still, even the factor of not getting any consciousness, the experience alone is still massively cushioned. So what is there to lose in engaging in this? And if you do it with lumpen comrades whom have experience, whom have experience at being homeless, they can help you out. They're your mates, so it's not so rude. A bit rude and intruding to go and expect just man them on the street to teach you wagwan. So knowing someone who's lumpen and can be there and go through things with you, show you what trapping about is, teach you about the daytime sleeping, nighttime roaming that lumpen proletarians or on the streets typically have to do because of the manner of robbery that a lot of lumpen aristocrats will do on us, and even a lot of desperate lumpen proletarians will do. So it's it just engaging within the world that ain't yours, breaking out of that cage, just so you can actually see the dysfunctionality of capitalism firsthand. Do Engels' walk through the most dangerous streets of Manchester, but do it even more. Go deep. Really, you got to walk among the people. You got to go deep into the echelons of the lower class. It's easy for us in the lumpen proletariat. We're already lumpen proletarian. We already are in the echelons of the lower class. That's our walk of life. When you're in the middle class, I really understand it's quite hard. You don't have a mindset, you don't have our experience, but you're not gonna fix that problem by being an outlier, by not integrating and emerge and submerging yourself into our conditions and walking among us. So walk among us. Join us in our fucking city of filth. It'll teach you something, a hell of a lot. And, engaging with us intellectually on fair grounds, a lot of your reactionary ideas may get knocked down a peg, and a lot of our reactionary ideas might get knocked down a peg. It becomes a great folly, a great functional, a great function of debate that allows a conglomeration, a conglomeration of learning between two completely different styles of intellectual, where the petty bourgeois intellectual will engage with the organic intellectual, and we get to actuate our different frameworks of learning and apply critical lens to each other, with the proletarian organic intellectual holding greater significance in regards to how a communist party should be organizing itself on an intellectual basis. The petty bourgeois intellectuality is against socialism. It is not pro-communist. It's within its own veil of pretentiousness, individualism, Kaiserism, especially with very up its own ass mentality, and conglomerates itself around having intellectuality as a separate thing from the common folk, from layman's, as they like to say, which is an insult that implies a bricklayer is thick as shit, which is why you shouldn't use the term layman's. I'm only using it to explain the term's meaning. While the organic intellectual idea that comes up from Gramsci is the intellectuality of the proletariat shows that the intellectual engagement is a very natural thing that the masses on a majorative basis engage with, and therefore through the organic intellectual we can envelop a society where everyone is a goddamn motherfucking intellectual. Why not? Even people who suffer with learning disabilities, I suffer with learning disabilities, are more incapable of actuating towards intellectual being with all of them in their own right. Even people who are more pegged back a bit, they still are able to actuate intelligence in a human that can't, unless the extreme vegetative state of people's, where they're in comas and other things like that. But you know what I mean. If you can move, if you can any form of actuative thinking or communicating, you are able to think on an intellectual basis. I've had many conversations when I was in hospital, when I had my arm operated on, with a guy who had his frontal lobe completely fucking destroyed, and we still actuated we still actuated in an intellectual fashion on a couple of bases, even though he himself had been knocked back to acting like a 9-year-old. So and he was a 50-year-old man, but his frontal lobe was completely fucked. So this is what I'm saying. Like, ableism is completely fucking. It's complete pseudo-scientific bullshit with the way they look down on people suffering with learning disabilities or severe injuries that put us in a contentive position in our actuation towards the petty bourgeois ideal for intellectual engagement, when patience, respect, solidarity, love, these things, when actuated with an intellectual discussion with any person who can communicate, you will be able to have a healthy and fulfilling conversation on some form of thing, on some form of intellectual matter, even if it doesn't seem so important to you. What's this sort of like ushering of importance? I know people who suffer with severe learning disabilities that really struggle to actuate in science and maths, but they can break down the functions of video games to you like that. They're not fucking stupid for that, are they? No, they're fucking smart. They're showing actuation of intent, and this happens with a lot of people. So really, really important things to concentrate down, and why people who suffer with learning disabilities need to be listened to by Marxists within the intellectual sphere. But the organic intellectual is the future forward for the revolutionary movement, and as Lenin says, within the communist organization, the petty bourgeois intellectual must be wherever possible swapped out for a proletarian intellectual of the same candor. As in who's aspiring for the same function of the party, is what I mean. Like by that, if you had two people who were actuating towards propaganda organization, and one of them was a proletarian intellectual and the other was people which were intellectual, you would predominantly want to put the proletarian intellectual in that position, unless there was some other condition like that put them in a position of contention where it's not a good idea for that comrade to be in that position. Application of cadres is very important at looking at class character. But I have rambled and waffled on. I will kill this on the final message of organization is key. And it needs to be actuated now. The world is in a dire state. So, red salute. Fucking mic's in the way. Red salute, comrades. Or remember, for those who are in the middle class in the first world, step the fuck out of capitalist realism and realize capitalist reality. Slante, comrade.